coming up today on a very special edition of Seahawks Forever.
All right, I'll deal with the elephant in the room. As a lot of you guys are like you, I'm a Mariners fan, and I'm so sorry that you're here. I'm so sorry that we were all available for this. And I had some people messaging me during the run. They're like, dude, I thought you were a Mariners fan. I can't believe you would schedule a show in Seattle during the World Series. And I was like, dude, I'm the most Mariners fan. Because it didn't even cross my mind. It never hit me. We schedule these things very far in advance. We booked this last December. Last December we booked this, and not one time was I like, oh, late October. I bet the M's will be making a run.
That is Dustin Nickerson. If you're not familiar with his work, he is a national touring comedian. Most recently opened for Nate Bargatze on his tour. Maybe you saw him at Climate Pledge Arena. He's also open for Taylor Tomlinson, among others. He's been on The Tonight Show. And if you haven't figured it out already, he is born and raised in the Seattle area, lives in San Diego now. He's a big Mariner fan, big Seahawk fan, and the misery that he experienced as being part of those fan bases that we all know so well helped to shape the person and the comedian he is today. And he came to prominence in this area on social media during the Mariners playoff run last year and incorporated some of that into his act. It's a wide-ranging interview today. We're going to talk Seahawks. We're going to talk Mariners. We're going to talk comedy. We're going to talk about sports in general and how wins and losses kind of help shape our view of the world. Really excited about this one. Dustin Nickerson joins me next on Seahawks Forever.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
Let's go ahead and take care of this right out of the gate so that we can just get into this conversation. It's about an hour long, and I will say this. I will have time-stamped chapters down below so that you can pick and choose if you'd like to. Seahawks stuff, Mariners stuff. But I encourage you to watch the whole interview because it's a great conversation. I really, really enjoyed this one. You're going to enjoy some Omaha Steaks this month at a great discount. What a deal they have for you. It's their Sizzle All the Way sale at omahasteaks.com. This is a family-run business for over 100 years. I've been eating these steaks ever since I was, about yay big. 100% USDA certified. They come individually cryo-packed in a cold case to your door, any cut that you would imagine. And right now, if you go to omahasteaks.com and take advantage of this sale, you're going to get 50% off site-wide plus an additional $35 off at checkout if you use the promo code FOREVER. That's the kind of thing you get for watching this show. omahasteaks.com, 50% off plus an additional $35 if you use the promo code FOREVER. And now is also the best time to sign up for the Sleeper app. This is, without a doubt, the best sports app out there. I say this because I've been using it for 2 years and they've only been sponsoring me for the last 3 months. Anything you want to do, fantasy sports, daily fantasy, you want to follow along with games in their real-time tracker. They call it the Sleeper Zone. Get it? See what they did there? Just pick a game and you get the best real-time play-by-play tracking, which you can react to each individual play and also chat with the community there. But for games of skill, well, if you sign up today, they're going to get you started with $20 free, no deposit necessary. But if you want to make a deposit, they're going to match that first one up to $100, 100%. If you check out the Sleeper app today and use the promo code FOREVER, terms and conditions do apply. All right, let's get to this. Again, Dustin Nickerson is, if you're a comedy fan and you haven't checked this guy out, absolutely do. I'll make sure that his website is linked down below, as well as we show a couple of clips from a show he did in this area in October where during the Mariners ALCS run, and he got some mileage out of some of that material, really good stuff. And so we show some of that during this interview, but I'll put the YouTube link to that entire whole session, that unedited clip that I pulled from off of YouTube. But I hope you enjoy this. This is Dustin Nickerson talking about all things Seattle sports with me today. Dustin, thanks for doing this. I've been looking forward to this because I figure we have some trauma bonding that we might be able to do. Let's start this way. Kind of give people your background a little bit, growing up in the Pacific Northwest, and then how you became a sports fan and some of the misery you've had to experience over the years in doing so.
Well, yeah, grew up in Federal, Washington. As far as becoming a sports fan, I think I was just born into it, unfortunately, against my will. Listening to old Mariners games in the 90s with my dad, on the radio. I remember a lot of radio, a lot of Niehaus, a lot of Rick Riz on the radio, and just kind of was around. And then, growing up in Seattle in the 90s, in so many ways, Seattle was at the cultural epicenter of the 90s, and that, we had, obviously the music scene, but also happened to have, the coolest athlete on the planet in Ken Griffey Jr. And also a very relevant basketball team. So, Seattle became a sports city in the 90s. And then everything since then has grown. But, you just grew up rooting for the teams here. I also remember very vividly an introduction to, the greed of billionaires, because if you remember in the 90s, the Seahawks were blacked out a lot. Yeah. Like their games were not on TV because, remember, their owner was constantly threatening to move the team to LA. It's so funny because the Sonics left, but the Mariners and the Seahawks were the teams we worried about leaving. The Sonics were the ones that were good. We didn't have any worries about the Sonics, which just goes to show you, billionaires will screw you in any way they can, even when you're not ready for it.
Yeah, it was a crazy time. Jeff Smolian was talking Tampa Bay. I think that was a real threat there for a while.
Yeah, the Seahawks were always talking to LA.
Ken Behring had the truck. He had the truck packed.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So it was, it was a traumatic time. A lot of, I remember even in the first Super Bowl, what year did the Hawks go to the Super Bowl?
2005.
2005, yeah.
Yeah, well, 2006 was the game, yeah.
Yeah, I remember the city not being that abuzz about it. Like, it was, of course, like sports fans knew, but the Seahawks did not have a deep-rooted tradition in the Seattle, because it was, a relationship where the woman kept threatening to leave you. And then, once we got Holmgren and things kind of, leveled out, we got steady. But yeah, so unfortunately I was born into this pain. And despite the fact I've moved 1,200 miles away to San Diego, I still live in a pretty active daily pain of it all.
Yeah. So a couple things about that. First of all, you moved in like the early 2010s, right? Right around there.
Yeah. It was like 2011 we moved. Yeah.
So before the Seahawks won a Super Bowl, as soon as you leave, then they win. Do we have you to thank for that?
100%. I take full credit for the fact that I watched that Super Bowl 1,200 miles away. No, all due respect to the Legion of Boom and Pete Carroll and Russ and Marshawn, all of them. It's the fact that this guy moved. I wish I could take credit. Those franchises were cursed long before I was born.
Yeah, there's something to it with the Mariners and me as well. In '95, when they made their first playoff run and the great win against the Yankees, I was in my broadcast career back then. I was stuck in Bismarck, North Dakota. It was the first year of the wild card. They didn't even have a TV contract for it yet, so I couldn't even watch the games live. I had to watch the ticker on the bottom of CNN. On that note, so if I'm doing the math right, you were born in '84, incidentally, the year that I graduated from high school. So your formative years, about the time you got to the age where you were aware of what sports were and probably got into it, was around that time, '95, right? You're 11, 12 years old. The Mariners are good. Like, so you started out thinking everything was going to be gravy.
No, because I was there for the years before too. Yeah, I mean, baseball, I feel like baseball, I think it's in large part because Little League and T-ball, which is such a highly participated youth sport. A lot of young kids fall for baseball early because you play it, and so you love it, and you know it, and you understand the rules, and it was part of your culture. So, I mean, I was a fan in kindergarten, first, second, third grade. I was a younger elementary kid there for some of the bad years. But what we always had was Griffey. That was what we always had. And it's so funny as an adult, you know, you talk to people around my age, you know, you travel across the country, Griffey comes up all the time. I knew Griffey was big, but when you start traveling and working around and get known as a Seattle sports fan, it's crazy how much Griffey comes up. He was truly the coolest athlete on the planet. You know, the shoes, he introduced kind of a swagger to the sport that it hadn't seen before. He's blowing bubbles. He's taking fly balls from his dad. He's wearing a backwards hat in the home run derby. It's unbelievable.
While winning it.
Yeah. So I mean, as a kid, I was in on the Mariners before the Mariners were anything good to me.
Yeah, he was one of those transcendent athletes that even rivals appreciated and respected and couldn't say anything bad about, you know?
Yeah. And honestly, and I don't know that Seattle sports has had one since, because I don't think they come around very often. Cal might be it.
Yeah, you might be right.
You know, Cal had a great year, but, you know, let's see him do it for a decade. You know, but that idea that, you know, I remember, you know, one thing growing up playing Little League in this Northwest is they would always tell you, hey man, you need to hit like Edgar, not like Griffey. They would always say that to you. Like, stop going in there just trying to look, oh, it's such a beautiful swing. They're like, yeah, and only he gets to do that. You don't get to do that. You got to hit like as if that was easy, by the way.
Right.
Yeah, it was he was so transcendent. Probably to this day the most famous Seattle sports athlete ever, right? I mean, I'm not even
I think hands down. I felt early in his career I thought Russ might have had a chance to be kind of like that, and then he just didn't really manage
I'll be curious your thoughts on this. I've gone full circle redemption arc with Russ, and that, you know, Russ was, you know, the rookie, the nerd in the jeans that we all fell in love with. And, you know, the guy that fell back in the draft, and it's in Eminem songs, and, you know, super likable. And then, you know, as you started to realize all the weird kind of stuff with the LOB in the room, and you're like, maybe he wasn't the most liked guy, or maybe kind of, you know, for whatever reason, maybe all the stuff that's been said about Russ, you know, kind of a little too buttoned up, a little too, you know, everything seems so formulated with him.
Right.
And then just straight up leave the way that he did with the big contract. Now I was rooting against him. I was actively rooting against him in Denver, wanted to see him do bad. Now I feel bad for him. And now I'm becoming a Russ Hall of Fame apologist. I'm like, he absolutely deserves to be all. So I've gone, you know, time heals all wounds, as they say. But I'm like, absolutely, he should be a Hall of Famer. He's got better stats than Eli. You know, I'm just like, I'm doing the stuff. I'm like, I was like, I mean, really, if you look at him statistically, he's like the same as Stafford. You should be able to play your way out of the Hall of Fame. It's just so funny because 3 years ago, I was like, what a bum. He's the reason we lost. I'm such a petty, fickle sports fan.
I think I'm mostly with you. I felt like he needed kind of one last little bit of success on one of these stops to sort of solidify that. Maybe not to the level of Kurt Warner, who like went to a Super Bowl with the Cardinals, but I was really rooting for him hard earlier this year. I thought with Dable there in New York, that might be a decent situation for him. But it fell apart so quickly, and they wanted to get the young guy in there. With him, I think some of his legacy might be written by what he does next. Like, now that it's clear that he's probably not going to be handed another bridge starting job in preseason again, does he want to keep playing? If he does, I think it helps his cause. If he goes somewhere as a backup, he gets a chance to come in and win a few games here and there. I don't know. I think he's right on the precipice because he gets, fairly or unfairly, I think he gets criticized, or not criticized, but downgraded because of that team he played on with the LOB and everything else. Pretty good situation for a quarterback to be in.
Yeah. But I mean, those were pretty monster stats there he had really post the Super Bowls, you know, which were, you look at him and you're like, I mean, he was, what's the guy got 10 Pro Bowls? And I know Pro Bowls aren't the end all be all, but
all pro. Yeah, it's a lot.
I mean, 10 Pro Bowls is wild. But again, he did not come back full. He did not reach the the status that Griffey did, obviously, probably the next closest would be Ichiro, right? I mean, Ichiro.
Yeah.
I mean, Peyton was
Ichiro,
huge.
Edgar would be right up there.
Edgar,
Yeah.
but cultural beyond your city. Edgar obviously is beloved, but not a household name in the way that
Ichiro was worldwide. Yeah, literally.
Yeah. And hopefully he's going to help land us a couple Japanese bats.
Still hanging around. I hope so. What happened to that pipeline? Yeah, that
I know.
thing's kind of dried up. I did an off-season plan this year, and I've got one move right so far. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I had him signing Okamoto. I liked him a little better than Murakami just because he can play third. He can actually play third. But come on, Ichiro, step it up.
I mean, this is your world. I would be so disingenuous if I said I had a preference one way or the other. I don't know.
And with Ichiro, I just he is as great a player as he is or was, and as great of a Mariner as he is, still hanging around, still out there.
In his uniform.
He's not a great recruiter.
No.
We've missed out on all the Japanese guys in the last 10 years.
Listen, he's done enough for us.
Now, as far as the Seahawks go, growing up through the 90s, you watched a lot of bad football, too. A lot of bad football. I mean, that 91 team that's just so memorable because I think they averaged less than 8 points a game on offense. That's just unheard of.
Yeah.
I think the Titans are the worst in the league right now. They're averaging 14 or 15. At least they're scoring 2 touchdowns. But yet the defense was so good. Cortez Kennedy wins a Defensive Player of the Year.
Defensive Player of the Year, yeah. And that's, that was the kind of stuff that you cheered for as a Seahawks fan in the 90s, was individual accomplishments. You're like, did Brian Blades make a Pro Bowl?
Mm-hmm.
You're like, it was just, it was Kenny, it was like individual accomplishments, like that's really all you had. And, there were definitely some years like that with the Mariners, like with Felix, that you're just like, hey man, I'm just hanging on to individual achievements. That's all I got. Yeah. And I actually thought that's a sign of all these Yankees fans getting worked up about Judge winning the MVP or not. I was like, man, this is a real sign of how irrelevant of a franchise you guys have become. The Yankees were not a team that cared about MVPs when I was a kid. It was rings or nothing. Who cares about these other things? This was stuff for little old franchises like Seattle to worry about. But it was my grandpa growing up. I was very close to my grandpa, and he's a Bay Area fan. So I always had a second team that I liked, and there you can find jerseys. In my childhood somewhere, there's jerseys of me wearing 49ers jersey because they weren't even a rival at the time.
Sure,
right? Remember they were NFC West. You cheer for your grandpa's team, but I always remember being like, this would feel better. This would feel a lot better if it was the team that I cheered for the most. If it was the team in the city that I love. So the Seahawks were, again, and you remember this, Dan, they were literally not on TV for a while there. Mm-hmm. And when you said unwatchable in the literal sense that you could not watch them on your television. So
and in those early days, they were when they had moments of relevance, it was because they did something novel, like the Monday Night Football game where the fake kick and they threw it to Efrain Herrera. They were the wacky, right?
Or didn't Craig have 7 fumbles in a game or something like that? There was a couple.
He got sacked. He got sacked. What was it? Derek Thomas got him 7 times in one game. There was that.
Yeah. There was something. Yeah. It was always that's a great way of putting it. If there was something kind of wacky and zany that happened that, you're like, oh, okay, I guess we made it on SportsCenter this way.
what was the old the highlight reels they used to do every week of bad plays? I think it was called Football Follies. They were always featured pretty prominently.
Yeah.
Those shows.
Yeah, the bloopers or whatever. There was it was just stats like that where you're like, oh, wow, Steve Largent hit a guy really hard. Stuff like that,
Memorable. Michael
Great
Harden.
play, but just individual weird things. That was all we had when it came to the Seahawks.
And they couldn't even fail properly. I think it was 91 season when they ended up getting the second pick in the draft. And so they take Rick Meyer because they needed a quarterback. And if they just lost one more game, they would have got Drew Bledsoe instead. In the 90s might have been much different. And the reason we didn't get Drew Bledsoe is because we beat the Pats that year as one of our 2 wins.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Couldn't even fail properly.
Yeah. I mean, we have a couple of the all-time draft busts. I mean, it was just a poorly run organization. There are just good franchises and there are bad franchises, and it depends who your owner is and your GM and all that stuff. And, it really obviously changed under Paul Allen and Mike Holmgren and then Schneider. Like you got a run of like stability that, I mean, even the idea now, I mean, Dan, this, even the idea that people are like finding a way to complain at 9-3 is to any Seahawks lifer is hysterical. Yeah. You're like 9-3. What are we, the best team of all time?
Do you think that where does that come from? Does it come from the insecurity that was built up from years of losing, right? Are we like, is it like being the hot girl at the prom, but she doesn't think she's pretty because she was told once that she, it's got to be all tied in together somehow.
I think that Seattle sports fans, particularly Seahawks fans, there is a BC era fan and then an AD area, but BC, and I'll just, in my mind, it stands but before Carroll. These are fans who cheered for this franchise before Pete Carroll, because remember, Pete coming from USC brought such an LA cool. Yeah. Suddenly, there's like a relevance to us. There's a buzz. Pete has this star quality to him. That we'll go 7-9 and win the playoff game. There's celebrities around, Snoop's around, Will Ferrell's around. Like there's and that fan got entitled to winning. That fan got entitled to like, no, this is a thing we do. We win here. And then anyone who was a fan before that era knows like, no. Good things don't happen to Seattle sports. There's an optimism and a pessimism. And I think anyone who's been cheering for Seattle sports, the BC area, I think in our hearts, genuinely, I don't use this hyperbole, expect it to end poorly. You hope it goes better, but you expect this to go poorly. Because other than 1 year, it has.
Yeah. There is a sense of if it's not perfect, then it's not good enough.
Right. And that's because they adopted a team, probably after Beast Mode's run or somewhere in and around when Pete Carroll showed up, or maybe even the first Super Bowl that we go to with Hasselbeck, and there's some good years. And they're like, yeah, we go to the playoffs. We go to NFC championships. That's a thing that we do. And I'm like, I'm just glad the games are on TV, baby. I'm thankful for an opportunity to watch these games and that we remain competitive. I always think a lot about the one of the more underrated, heartbreaking moments in Seattle sports is, I think it's 99, the Vinny Testaverde year.
Yeah, the touchdown.
The touchdown that wasn't a touchdown. And do you remember what that led to? Instant
Dennis
replay.
Erickson getting fired.
Yeah, well, yes, and instant replay. Erickson gets fired. Instant replay is in effect the next year. The next year. You're like, when you talk about like getting even like, were we the sacrificial lamb here? That was to stay out. That was for a playoff berth.
Yeah. And it wasn't even close.
It was, and that's where fans like us, I'm like, of course that happened. Of course Springer hit. When Springer went in, when it was all guys, like I didn't even watch the at bat. I was like, this is gone. I know this is gone. And I don't care who was pitching. It was gone.
The reason you felt that way is because we saw it happen 30 years ago whenever Paul O'Neill would come to the plate to face one of our relievers.
I wasn't ready for
David Justice. You just knew it didn't matter if we had our best reliever on the mound. It was the ninth inning, whatever. It's a playoff game. You just knew they were going to hit it out. Same thing with Alvarez a couple years ago in Houston. Yeah. But if it sounds like you're like me, and even back in the 90s when when the Seahawks were just terrible, when there was no hope. Now the NFL works very hard to create parity, and there is a sense every year in the preseason that every fan base has hope. There was no hope for being a Seahawk fan back in those days, and yet I lived and died week to week. If they lost a game, even against a good team, it ruined my week for me.
Yeah. I was younger. And so, the difference between me and you, Dan, at that stage of our life is I had school the next day. I
was an adult and stuff.
Yeah,
I had responsibilities.
No, I would say my 20s and 30s are when sports wins really kind of hit me the hardest. Because it's when you kind of wanted it the most. Because, as a kid, you're like, I got my own sport to play this week. There was other things going on in my life, and I was more distracted by girls than. That being said, I mean, I was, I cried like Joey Cora did in '95. I mean, that was, I don't think I've ever expected. The Seahawks have never hurt me that bad. In that I've never really had a lot of hope in them. When we lost to Pittsburgh, it almost went it's such a heartbreaking way that when people are like, you could have scripted it. I'm like, I mean, no, this is better than the heartbreaking script I would have been. So, the 43-8 against the Broncos will always be the least I've ever felt like a Seahawks fan because it was so abnormal. The next year, I was like, that's what being a Seahawks fan is. That's what that is. That's like anytime I see like a top 10 going of like top Super Bowl plays ever, I turn the channel because I know what number one's going to be. It's the same. It's forever. For the rest of our lives. Yeah. Nobody cares about 43-8 the year before, that the best defense shut down the best offense ever. What they'll remember is like, well, it could have been 2. And even the way you hear people talk about it now, they're like, that should have been a dynasty. And you're like, can't we just have one? Can't we just enjoy the one?
Now, as a comedian, I mean, misery, losing is funnier, right?
So much funnier.
It was easier to write jokes about Super Bowl 49 than about Super Bowl 48. Am I not wrong? Am I?
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, there's a reason that, Bill Burr doesn't do bits about being a Boston sports fan. I mean, which dynasty are you going to choose from, Bill? Which one, huh? I mean, you have your pick of the litter. So, if you're a Bay Area comedian or you're a Boston area, these title towns who just win over and over, but watching, Stavros crash out every time the Ravens lose, pretty good time, So yeah, unfortunately, misery is a lot funnier because when you write jokes about winning, it just feels like you're bragging.
Now, when you play shows in this area, you lean into it pretty hard, and I'm going to play a couple of clips here. But I wanted to ask you, when you're on the road, like, how aware are you of, like, when you're in San Francisco, when you're playing a gig in the Bay Area, do you insult 49er fans? Do you rip on them a little bit, or do you value your life a little bit too much?
No, I'm very grateful that anybody bought a ticket to come to see me. And, sports are a part of my act, but they're not even that big of a part. They're a big part of my Twitter. They're pretty much exclusively what I talk about on Twitter. And, but my act is my life, being a 41-year-old dad, my marriage, my kids, my life. But you always try and put yourself in the room, in the city that you're in. To me, the best example of a sports joke is, though, even if I am making fun of your team, if it's so true that you still laugh at it. That's like if someone came to Seattle and just did some hacky joke about like the Sonics leaving or handing it off, like you didn't even dig deep, like you just did but like, when I'll just give you a couple examples. When I was in the Bay Area, I did some jokes. I said like, I did a few jokes about the Niners because I was wearing a I just broken my ankle. And I go, I know this is weird for a Seahawks fan to be wearing 49er paraphernalia. By that, I mean an ankle brace. And that hit because that team's and then I said something like,
there you go.
The Giants are 500 for the last 4 years, which is the closest San Francisco has to a middle class, so they're kind of jokes like that, right, where they're like,
that works.
This works. This is pretty funny. I'll give you that, so if I can do like a little bit of like a roasty stuff, it's fun. It puts yourself in the room. But the other thing that you realize is not all your fans care about sports. So, if I do a bunch of jokes about, the San Francisco Giants while I'm in there, I'm like, a third of the crowd is like, I don't know who why are you talking about Tim Lincecum? I don't know who that is. And you're like, I'm like, the Mariners should have drafted him. They took Brandon Morrow over him. I thought that I have way more often than I should, by the way. I think about that every week. I think about how they took Brandon Morrow out of Cal over Tim Lincecum. Just a colossal draft fail.
Yeah, one of many.
Yeah, truly.
Let me ask you this. Every comedian, as they're coming up through the ranks, and even some after they've made it to the level that you have, you all bomb from time to time.
Sure.
Does your experience as a Seattle sports fan growing up help you to deal with that a little bit better?
I wish. No. No, as bad as being a Seattle sports fan is, I'm here to tell you, bombing in front of a crowd is much worse. It's much worse because there's no other fans. It's just you up there. The bomb, if you want to know what the bomb feels like, the bomb is not watching the interception on the goal line. It's throwing it. That's what the bomb feels like. You're like, oh, man, no one to blame but me here. So, no, I wish I wish Seattle sports fan had hurt me through that. But unfortunately, no. The bomb in the comedy is unfortunately, if you've ever worried about like, God, that looks so awful, it is. It's as bad as it looks.
Is there one that stands out for you?
No, I mean, somebody asked Seinfeld this. He goes, yeah, do you have stories of bad shows? And he goes, that's like asking a cab driver if he's ever made a wrong turn. I mean, there are so many bad shows. And especially early on in the first 5, 7 years of your career where you're still learning. It's one of these jobs that you only learn how to do it on stage. It's the only way to learn how to do it. So, yeah, I mean, there's a couple lessons that you learn. I learned I'm not a comedian who can get mad on stage. I've learned that a couple times, unfortunately, that the crowds don't like it. Just who I am. I am just kind of a nice dad up there, telling jokes about my life up there. So if a crowd member is annoying me, I cannot get too mad at them because then I start to lose the crowd, so there's little stuff that you like that. But, I mean, I've been, booed. I've been, yelled at, you sucked, and sometimes the worst of all is just nothing. They just, I've got a corporate gig on Saturday. I don't know how that'll go. I will say this is one of the nice things about when you get older, when you get more advanced in your career in comedy. When you bomb now, you are bombing for more money. That's great.
Sure.
So the last bomb that I had, I mean, it was a true 40-minute bomb up there. They gave me a check that, covered close to a quarter's tuition at my son's college, San Jose State. So that made it worth it. I was upstairs. I was on stage going.
Was that a corporate gig too?
That was a corporate gig. Yeah.
It's funny because Nate Bargatze tells, who you've opened for before. He's a fantastic comedian. One of the hottest.
I did a Climate Pledge a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
There you go. He's talked about how his worst bomb came in a corporate gig too. I would imagine that's kind of common because it's not.
They're just not
the common man. It's not a regular.
They're
not there for the show.
Different. They're like, it'd be different. Like if Nate's doing a corporate now, they're like, oh my gosh, we got Nate Bargatze. That's crazy. We got a famous person to come in here. And now if I'm doing some corporate, they're like, who? Maybe I've heard of him. I guess maybe I've seen him on Instagram or something before. I don't know. And like, you're kind of just like, what you are is there was some meeting at that company that they're like, we should bring in a comedian. And and then you show up. But at least the main issue is that they're not there for the show. They've often been drinking and they're not super engaged. And it's hard to let loose when your boss is in the room.
Hmm.
You know, and then you also have very tight restrictions about what you can and can't talk about up there. They're like, don't do anything political. Don't talk about sex. Don't talk about, you know, so it's, you know, you're very kind of neutralized in that way.
Yeah. Now, they do say that sometimes the funniest jokes are funny because they're true. And I want to play this clip from you were up here in October doing a show here in the Seattle area, and you said something that it's funny, but I thought it was absolutely spot on too. I want to play this for the folks right now.
Game and they won, and the Seahawks haven't been winning as much at home, and I've been wondering why that is. And it's a very simple idea: is that the tickets are too expensive. Because all due respect to many of my fans who are very well-to-do, and I love that for you, but the 12th man is not a software engineer who lives in Redmond. The 12th man is a plumber in Renton who, that's who it is, who his wife has told the kids, hey, don't talk to dad when they lose. All right, Gino threw another interception in the end zone. Give dad some space. We need that guy to be able to afford a ticket.
I've written articles about that. I've done shows on that issue because it was such a big issue last year, especially. Why have they lost their home field edge? There's so many nuances to it. I think you nailed it, man.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that, you know, I say kind of tongue in cheek, you know, but, you know, classism is real, and classism will affect people's lives in a way that you don't realize it. And that is a way that you wouldn't even, when you think about, you know, the rising cost of living and expenses and inflation and rent and housing, you think about all these things. One small effect that it doesn't hit you until you see it live is that the everyday man and woman and family can't afford a football ticket. First off, you're in the business. I'm also in the business of selling extra. I sell comedy. All right. That's a total extra into somebody's life. And, you know, when this suddenly becomes a classist event, like just to be in the building, you have to be very well-to-do. It does affect, you know, it affects who's there. It suddenly it becomes a profitability type situation. People are buying and they're reselling their tickets. They're trying to turn it over. They're trying to make money on that. And you also, is like kind of like cliche as it sounds, is, you know, people who in that scenario, they're just not nearly as invested in the outcome of the game. It's an experience. It's, we're here, we're fine. Yeah, let's go. I'll buy a Seahawks hat. I'll do this. And we've all, you know, it's very similar to when I go to concerts in LA. LA is the worst concert crowd in America because it's a bunch of people who don't really care about being there or the band or the music. They're just there. They're just industry. They're just, you know, it's kind of a hip thing to do. Let's go to the Hollywood Bowl tonight. And, you know, you see the same thing when in these boxes and these crazy expensive seats that, you know, these are people who don't care that much or bought these season tickets as a thing that they could resell it. And now you look and it's royal blue down in the front rows because they sold all their tickets to Buffalo. You know, it's a real, like, you know, classism real, and it does affect live sporting events.
Well, and I think you touched on it earlier too, and you can tie it all together in that it got cool when Pete Carroll got here.
Yes.
And it coincided with the massive tech boom here in Seattle. So you got a lot of young people moving to the city that weren't from here. They all had a bunch of money because they're all getting paid these massive signing bonuses to move up here. They were able to afford the good seats at Lumen Field because it was the cool place to be, but they're not as invested. So that edge is gone. But now they haven't lost since you made that joke. And it feels like that energy is returning to Lumen Field. How do you feel about this Seahawks team, this Mike McDonald Seahawks team, and what they're doing?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't live in the area anymore, so I wish I could speak to, you know, the atmosphere of the games, you know, and the buzz of the city.
But even just how well they're doing on the field.
I mean, the wins are the wins. Yeah. That's the other thing is the team, the the city had gotten spoiled by a little bit of the success too, and that you're more likely to fill these seats if this team is relevant and good and winning and has star power. And that's what seems to be happening right now. Is the team has some star power to it, but also the team has like a very I think this team appeals to the plumber and Renton, and that it is guys like JSN who, like Cal, should be talked about as MVPs, but don't, because then they're in the Northwest and they weren't as highly touted, and they don't have patented touchdown celebrations like other receivers do. It has a team that's identity is defense. And identity is not a Kyle Shanahan, like, oh, this is the young offensive genius. It's like, no, he's the young defensive genius. So I do think that, Seattle, for all of its tech money that is very much there, I mean, any of us, especially those of us who grew up in the South End, know that this is actually a pretty gritty town full of gritty blue collar workers who, worked union jobs, worked in the ports. That was my dad. My dad, for 30 years, got up every morning at 4 a.m. and went and threw luggage into the planes at Alaska Airlines. I was raised by the airline union. Like that is still the DNA of, anyone who's been around in Seattle since the 90s and the early 2000s. So I do think that makes sense that, the deep-rooted Seahawks fan, I prefer good defenses. I prefer it as a fan. It's so fun to watch a team when they're on defense. It's so fun. Like I watch every play when we're on defense now. A lot of time if I'm watching games, I emotionally, if I'm when we have bad defenses, I'm doing I'll watch it, I'll record it an hour in advance, and then I'll kind of 15-second it, do the 15-second skip. Sure. And I don't like watching teams do 8-minute, 90-yard drives. That's bad for morale. But right now I'm like, oh my gosh, who's going to get a sack? Who's going to get an interception? Yeah. It is very fun, to root for a gritty team in that regard. And frankly, you saw this with Seattle teams, is those are teams that do well in the playoffs because, sure. If Seattle has to do a road, if Seattle has to go to Lambeau in January, that's not an issue. Yeah. If anything, I think that fits what the Seahawks do better than, offensively than a team that relies, on their quarterback. Green Bay's got a great defense too, but it is a team that you're just you remember those old Legion of Boom teams. You're like, cool, oh, yeah. New York in December,
you can win anywhere. Yeah,
we're gonna win by 30. Yeah. So it is a fun team. It'll be interesting to see. This is 2 quarterbacks in a row now where we're dealing with whether or not we're going to redeem their image. Yeah. And our wins and losses are spent on that. But I do like that, Darnold can throw 4 picks and we can barely lose to the Rams still. Right. That's right. Isn't it weird? I felt better after that loss than I felt after the Titans win. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So It's a fun team to root for, man. I really enjoy it.
So as I mentioned earlier, you were up here in October, you did some shows, and this is when I think it's about the time I reached out to you because, man, you were dominating my Twitter feed, my social media feed. Yeah. You were getting a lot of mileage out of that. First thing I want to ask you, there were some nights where here's your favorite baseball team and they're in the ALCS. They have a chance to break the drought and get to the World Series. There's nights where you were on stage and didn't know how they were doing. What was that like for you?
It was kind of a welcome distraction in the sense that, playoff baseball, and it's learning
stressful.
And I'm learning, from the little experience we've had in it too, playoff hockey is so stressful.
Yeah.
Because there is no break there. You're just like this the whole, and baseball, I was on Chuck and Buck a couple months ago. I was talking about this. Baseball is not a sport that is meant to watch every pitch, emotionally. Baseball is a sport that's meant to watch passively. You know, it's literally called America's pastime. You're
Right.
you have a beer. It's about the hot dog. It's about the environment. You know, it's hanging on, you know, your manager's reliever decision, and, you know, after 4 2/3, and whether or not you need to bring up, you know, the advantage lefty right now. You're just like, I can't live this way, Dan. It's too much. Like, it's so the times that I did go on stage, it was a welcome distraction in that regard. That being said, you want to be there in the moment that they I mean, I was on stage when the Geno home run happened. So that was a bummer, but you know, in classic Seattle sports, and, you know, I complained about this once on MLB Network, you know, and maybe some Mariners fans don't like to hear this from me, but everyone's like, dude, the Geno home run, what a moment. And I'm like, we lost the series.
Yeah. Yeah.
To me,
it'll go down to being a similar memory for fans 5 to 10 years from now as the Jermaine Kearse catch.
Yes.
In Super Bowl 49.
Yes. That's a great way of putting it. And yes, they won the game, but you just go, yeah, I mean, if they win the series, it's an all-time grand slam. Right. You know, and you'll think about it forever. But, you know, unfortunately, it's like, you know, I don't remember what happened in the Cleveland series after we beat the Yankees. I don't remember that.
Yeah.
And they won some games, and I'm sure some people hit some big hits. I just don't remember. You know, you remember the ones. I remember the Carlos Guillen sacrifice, you know, bunt, or that's an unbelievable. The White Sox, I remember that because that's a winning play of a winning series.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so in that way, it was a welcome distraction. That being said, it did kind of become an ongoing bit where, like, they were doing better when I was on stage, and people were commenting on that and like, dude, you got to go on stage. And I'm like, can I watch the games, please, man? Right. Can I please? And then a couple weeks ago, they signed Naylor while I was on stage, and I'm like, dang it. It's happening. Even off-season moves are happening while I'm on stage. Can I please just be a fan?
Yeah, and I've got a little bit here. I want to play this first of all because you mentioned it first, but because I wanted to get your reaction to this because it happened. Here we go.
Introduced me to the phrase if he wanted to, he would. Which I don't know if you know that phrase. It's a very simple idea that if somebody loves you, they would just show that they love you, right? They would just do the action that proves that. And so I'm changing that phrase to if he wanted to, he would re-sign Josh Naylor. So, yeah, very simple. You say you love us, prove it, all right? I've had enough of hot dogs from the upper deck. I don't need those. I need a first baseman.
Well, now you have one. They re-signed Josh Naylor. Is this are you buying this new commitment from ownership? And now, depending on which reports you want to read, they still might have 25-30 million to spend. They're aggressively looking for other upgrades out there. Is it sunk in yet? Is this real?
Yeah, I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, I think it was particularly last 2 seasons ago, where you would I remember posting this of, you know, one of the hardest parts about being a Seattle Mariners fan is knowing in your heart that you wanted to win more than ownership did. Like you knew that. Yeah. And I don't think I feel that way anymore, you know, because really going back to the Arozarena signing, you go like, oh, this team is active. Like maybe not in the way that is traditionally active and that they do the big free agent offseason signing. Right. But, you know, we all know enough about sports to know that doesn't always pan out. You know, like Juan Soto has missed a lot of playoff appearances as he has become like a journeyman of the league. You know, what's he on, like his 5th team at this point, you know? Yeah. So there is part of you that's like, no, go get, you know, whoever, the big free agent acquisition. But you know, if you go with the deadline deals, I mean, they have been really active. And then Naylor, if they would not have re-signed Naylor, I would have gone back to my original sentiment, because even knowing as little as I know about baseball and culture, you go, that guy's perfect here.
Yeah.
He's a good fit. He's a good cultural fit. He's got a bite. He's got an edge. We need a first baseman. And he doesn't rely on
he
power.
Likes being here.
And he likes being here.
Set him apart.
Yeah, he's Canadian. Of course he likes being in Seattle, you know? Like, and he likes hockey, and he goes to Kraken games, and he likes being here. And also, again, he's not a guy who's relying on the homer. That's where the Mariners can get screwed. I mean, friggin' date it back to the Richie Sexson days, like just the 50, 60 home run guy is not who bats 270. That's going to go down to 240 and 40 home runs. We did that for a long time with a lot of different guys. So that was such an obvious one that had they not signed him, then I would have gone back to like, you guys aren't serious about winning. Gino, we can all kind of go a little either way on. You're like, I could hear an argument against it. You'd like to see him back, but if they don't, they understand. But that one was such no-brainer. I don't know. I feel if you got to feel pretty, to me, going into the offseason, if they only re-sign Naylor, I'd be like, great, yeah, let's run it back. Let's see how Emerson looks. Let's see how the young guys develop. That certainly panned out well with Julio, and the pitching was so mediocre last year compared to their potential that you're like, I feel like they're going to get better, So yeah, I feel decent about it, even, and it seems like there might be a couple other moves. What do you think? What about you?
No, I think by making that move early, they've changed the entire outlook of the franchise in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, here it is. It's the first week of December, and we're not freaking out about ownership not spending money. We're not doomsdaying about the parade's going to pass us by again. We're not going to get any good players. I'll wait until February and sign a couple guys off the bargain bin. It has completely changed. I think it's the biggest move they could have made to craft public perception. I think it's so positive now about the Mariners.
And being a Seattle sports fan, I'm learning, maybe if I were a Seattle sports therapist, if that were my job and I were to counsel, Seattle sports fans alike, I would say, don't focus on the championships and worrying about just enjoy the good days. Just teach every good day. And you know what? The Naylor, that's a good day. Just enjoy the Naylor sighting, because so many years they wouldn't. And I go, the Seahawks are pretty good right now. Are they going to win it all? I don't know, but they're 9-3. Pretty sure they're going to be 10-3 after this week, and they're probably going to go to the playoffs, and that's great. And the Kraken look okay, and maybe get better. I don't know. I'm still learning hockey. The U.S. we got a good group that, for the World Cup, that looks pretty good. The Huskies just had their best recruiting class ever. So today, December 5th, 2025, today is a good day. And no one's going to play today. So it's a good day, and I can't be hurt today, Dan.
I feel like you just perfectly capsulized what I try to do with my podcast on a daily basis.
Yes.
It is to some extent therapy. I've always considered not always, but as I've gotten older, I've gotten more rational and optimistic, I think.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's not always easy, but we're there. You sum it up best this way. I have another clip to play. I was going to lead with this, but conversation took us another way. But if we're just going to kind of tie everything up in a bow, this explains it all.
I've been processing my emotions about this, all right, since the Mariners lost. All right, first I was angry. I was very angry. People are like, you're angry at Bizarre or Dan Wilson. I was like, no, man, I'm angry at my parents that I was born here. Like, I was like, you could have just flown down. You could have taken a one-way trip to San Francisco, and I'd have had like 30 championships in my 40 years of life, all right? So I was angry with them, and then I was sad, and I apologized to my son for passing on generational trauma. Because, hurt people. And I was like, you didn't have to be born here either, and I just passed that on to you.
For me, it was even worse because I'm also a Coug. I know you're a Husky, and so I had that too. I grew up with Mariner misery, Seahawks misery, losing the Sonics, Cougs being Cougs.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit about comedy. First of all, you mentioned the corporate date you have coming up this weekend. Is that the one in Oklahoma City?
So I'm in Tulsa right now.
Okay.
And I had a gig here last night, and then I have an off day today randomly. That does not happen very often. And then tomorrow I have a corporate in Oklahoma City, and then I have a ticketed public show in Oklahoma City on Sunday.
Do you have some good stuff ready? Some basketball?
Yeah,
stuff?
it's the last time I was there, I did a joke about the election being stolen, and I'm trying to remember the beats of the joke, but it was something along the lines of, it was a classic misdirect, how I don't think the election was stolen, but I understand if you do, how you could only root against the people that won because they were stolen. And, you hope nothing but bad things. And I get that because I'm from Seattle, and that's how I feel about the Thunder. And that got a big hit. That's a good example of a joke that they're like, okay, I can see what you did there. So also, there are universities in the news they made the playoff, but then they also had that girl who's claiming religious persecution. It's a big story over because she cited the Bible in her. So that might come up. But yeah, it's the way that I feel about it's so interesting. Like the Thunder, I have nothing against the people of Oklahoma City. I don't know. I mean, they've been nothing but good to me as humans, and they'll all come out proudly in their Thunder gear, knowing that I'm from Seattle, and it's like tongue in cheek. But it is so funny. It's like, it's like you got a divorce and your wife left you and she's with this other guy who you're like, I actually kind of like this other guy. I don't know. I'd hang out with him. I'd get a beer with him. But also, he's banging my wife and my wife's doing better than she's ever done before. My wife is thriving. They're like on the verge of a dynasty right now. They're like, what if they lost one game? They're like the best team in professional sports right now.
Yeah, I drove through Oklahoma City for the first time a few months ago and just resented the hell out of myself for recognizing how gorgeous of a city it is. It just
and that's
really is.
It is
that whole area.
And if you remember, they got that because Oklahoma City hosted New Orleans after Katrina. And everyone was like, these are the best group of humans on planet Earth. Look how much they've adopted and supported this fan base. They deserve a team. And I was watching that going like, yeah, Oklahoma does deserve a team. And then suddenly a series of lies and disingenuous owners of coffee corporations and city leaders and the Key Arena needs renovation. They need Stern wanted to give a team to his buddies and Schultz sold to an out of town owner, and the mayor at the time, it wasn't a priority to him. Yeah. Is that right? Is that a nice summary?
You summarized it well. Ironically,
those are the three villains, right? Are Schultz for selling to an out of city owner who we knew wanted a team. Yeah. Stern, who was buddies with Clay Bennett, right? And was like, backdoor, let's get you a team to Oklahoma City. And then I forget who was the legislation at the time, the mayor.
I think it was Greg Nichols.
Greg Nichols, who just didn't care, right? Just did not advocate for it being culturally important to the city of Seattle. Right. And because the whole idea of it needing a new arena, it was all a crock. We all knew that. Or just go build one and right next to
Oklahoma City's building their second one already.
Exactly.
Like the irony is one of the reasons that the NBA sold on that being a good move is, they have a new arena, and now they're already going to tear that one down and build a new one. And it was just.
And meanwhile, Climate Pledge, and I'll tell you, as somebody who performed in Climate Pledge a couple of months ago, it's gorgeous. It's perfect.
I hated that they did that. I thought the Soto Arena made way more sense as someone who I'm sure you're familiar with this location. I was the general manager at Aussies for many years. I know what gridlock in downtown Seattle around the Seattle Center can be like when there's even a mediocre event down there. But what they did with it changed my mind. It's the most beautiful arena I've been in.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And, it seems like the Kraken's selling pretty well, right? People are coming out to those games. Seattleites will find a way. There is a lot of urban density. People live around there, and it's.
I love the bit you had. You had a joke about how you tried to get into the Kraken, you've tried to get into the Sounders. You're kind of new to the sport, but also they haven't hurt you yet.
No, and they're like the Sounders in the Storm.
The Sounders in the Storm
were too fast.
Yeah, they were good too fast. There was no trauma bonding.
No. I mean, the Storm won within their first 10 years, I think. Yeah. The Storm were quickly good. and won a
multiple
few
titles.
Yeah, and have one of the all-timers in Sue Bird, and Lauren Jackson was great too. Lauren Jackson, right? Am I remembering that right? Yeah.
Lauren Jackson.
And and then the Kraken were, and I'm still learning. Hockey's tough because you're going against people who really live and die with hockey, and I'm still trying to figure out icing. I'm like, so the games I've gone to are great, and when I watched are great, but I'd be lying if I had a deep intensity love for them.
Yeah. Well,
let me ask you a question before we get off here. So I've never had ill will towards Cougs. I've never had that. I've always thought it was a fun rivalry, and it felt, I hope this isn't insulting, but it felt like a rivalry in like big brother, little brother type way. Big city, little city, west, east, bigger university, smaller university. Like it just felt the team that historically was better than the other, but it was always close for whatever reason. They were always close games. Is it because you guys have got I know the new pack's forming, but does it just feel like you're like in purgatory right now? Like you're lost at sea? Does it, because like as far as recruiting a coach, NIL, does it even feel like this is something that Wazoo can climb out of? Like if you're a Cougs fan.
Here's where I come from. And I think I have a unique perspective because I grew up here. So I was a diehard Husky fan until I made the late decision to go to Wazoo. And then I was all in, and I've been a loyal Cougar ever since. I think I've gone through the grief cycle, like all of the trauma of how effed up that whole thing was and how screwed Oregon State and Washington State got and left behind. And the bigger school that people from Oregon and a lot of fans from UW will exhaust a lot of energy trying to rationalize their position, and they had no choice, and you would have done it too, whatever. Now I kind of feel like I'm sort of sorry to admit this, but I kind of feel like we're where we belong. Like we weren't a revenue generating school. We don't have a big donor base. We needed to be in a big conference like that in order to spend and have the facilities we do now and that kind of thing. It sort of feels like the new conference they're building is about their level of where they can expect to be.
Interesting.
We can't compete in NIL. I read this. The University of Washington was 3rd or 4th in all of NCAA football last year in a Forbes magazine study they did on how much revenue the football programs produce.
Really?
And the University of Washington, it wasn't revenue, it was profit. The University of Washington was the 3rd most profitable football program in the country with nearly $80 million in profit, net revenue. The entire Washington State University athletic budget for all sports is $80 million.
Yeah.
Like that's not sustainable. We probably
belong
a fair game in a smaller conference. Yeah. And now I feel like we're back to our roots a little bit. I think I really like the new coach, and this class they signed, I think sort of illustrates that he gets it. He's not trying to go for 5 stars. He's not trying to sell something that Pullman isn't. He's trying to find the right players with a chip on their shoulder. Maybe they were overlooked. They like being in a rural. So I kind of feel like it's there, but the victim in all of this is the Apple Cup will just never be the same. Even if they keep playing every year, it just doesn't mean the same anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's just for whatever reason, it hasn't hit, because we've lost one and we've won one. It just doesn't feel the way that it used to. I actually feel that, I know this sounds great, but like with the realignment, I think there are very few rivalries that feel anything anymore. Because, like even the Wazoo Oregon one, which, we won 2, they won 2, you just like, it's still obviously you want to win that game. And there is plenty of online rivalry stuff. I don't know, just it's, I don't know anything. I don't know if it was the right move or the bad move, but like I just can't get up for Purdue. I can't like Indiana. You're like, who am I playing? Yeah. We got Rutgers.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the realignment is very, very strange. Yeah. And there's there's no. I miss. I'll be a Pac-12 after dark man for the rest of my life. I just give me some weird Stanford Arizona State game at 1 a.m.
Right.
2 a.m. if I'm on the East Coast working, just staying up for the most bonkers game I've ever seen in my life. I miss the regional rivalry of it all.
I feel like this is a good place to end. First of all, thank you for taking so much time. I'm glad you had a day off today and we were able to have this conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
But the fact that we finished talking about Huskies and Cougars, I feel like I have one more clip to play that I know we have some common ground on this one.
Listen, I've gone through, I've been processing my emotions about this, all right, since the Mariners lost. All right, first I was angry. I was very angry. People were like, "Are you angry, bizarre?" Or
That's not the clip. Already played that one. This is the one.
I've reached full acceptance. I reached full acceptance, all right, that I've come to grips with the fact I always tell myself when all my Seattle teams are breaking my heart, it could always be worse, all right? I could also be a Ducks fan.
That got a good response. That's
yeah.
Something we can always agree on.
Yeah, down with the Ducks, man.
Always hate for the Ducks. Thank you so much for doing this. I will, for everybody watching, I'll put your, it's DustinNickerson.com. He's big enough to have his own website.
Oh, how about that?
All your tour dates and everything are on there. You've also got the podcast with your wife. You've got a book out. You got a lot of stuff going on.
Thanks, man. Yeah, staying busy. And if anybody was wondering, I think I alluded to it. All this Seattle sports love, and I'm wearing this hat. My son is a runner. He's on the track and field and distance running at San Jose State University. So I've also adopted a new team that doesn't win a lot. I've taken on a new one.
That's good. You gotta
so go Spartans.
Keep the legacy going, and you'll be back up in this area in March.
I'll be in March. Yeah, I've got shows in Tacoma and Everett in March, and if you're on the east side of the state, I'll be in Spokane in April. I think Vancouver, BC. I'm always in the Northwest. Always something coming up that regard.
Just in time for baseball season to start again.
Yeah, I'm there opening weekend. Actually, I think.
Nice.
I'm almost positive. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Dustin. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan.
Well, I hope you stuck with me till the end. That means that you enjoyed the full conversation with Dustin. I get it. Some people want to stay focused today on YouTube. I just want this one thing. And if I stray, sometimes I get the comments down below. So thank you for being here. And if you are still here, if you don't subscribe already, please subscribe to the channel. Best way to help support me and get this out in front of more people. I am a full-time independent content creator, and so that's the best way you can support me. All the other ways you can help support me are listed and linked down below, including that QR code right over my shoulder where you can buy me a coffee or a beer. Until next time, follow me on Twitter at Seahawks Forever. Go to nwforever.com. That'll take you to my Patreon where you get all of my content all under one roof for one low price. And it includes Discord, which is where I hang out during games. So join the chat there as well. Forever and always, go Hawks. Thanks for watching, you guys.